So I'm, Gary Boffman, I work for the State of Missouri Department of Social Services Family Support Division, Risk Analysis Unit. And then Crystal will also be co-presenting, and she works for the Risk Analysis Unit as a management specialist. So, our agenda, kind of quick introduction. If you want to know more about us, you can ask us during Q&A or, outside of this sessions. I do recognize a person I had a conversation with prior. So we'll go over, kind of overview of our session. Prior to utilizing Tableau, we were stuck like a lot of state agencies with really, how do you retrieve data? How do you analyze data? You use whatever resources you have, which is a lot of time is Excel. Or in our case, when I started with FSD back in May 2012, I come from a background where I'm used to having, risk analysis reports, which was real time, every minute. And they were looking at information, 30 days, 60 days after the fact, and maybe they were trying to analyze all this in Excel. And Excel is a real powerful tool, especially if you utilize macros, but it's resource intensive to keep up to date. Or in our case, some people in the field at the different resource centers or processing centers, maybe we're tracking information on a piece of paper. And then, I'm just going to go over, before we'll have a demo of like 5 dashboards that we built that we're pretty, proud of. But prior to that, I'll kind of give like a background of the executive dashboard we built. They came to us and they say, hey, we want something interactive. And like, oh, we're utilizing Tableau. We can build it as a dashboard, and the executives way above me can interact with this dashboards on the measures that they want to track on a monthly basis. And then Chris will share with you guys challenges. Whenever state agency, we're limited with resources, knowledge. You got to learn a lot of this information on your own. Maybe you first start utilizing Tableau and your data source is Excel, and very quickly you realize, okay, I can't utilize Excel as my data source, so you start switching over to like a SQL table. So we're and then as the news get out that you're creating these really great reports that's providing now real-time information, that news gets out and it creates what we call the Wild West, that we can't keep up with the demand. Then we create all these different dashboards and we can't keep up on maintaining them. Therefore, I'm real adamant as the manager of this unit responsible for creating all these reports that we create them, connected in a database. Because once you utilize a database, it will automate automatically. So this is actually a screenshot of an Excel file that was a data source. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen Excel files like this, which is your data source. And from this data, there's like hundreds of rows. Not hundreds of rows, but hundreds of thousands of rows, but hundreds of columns. And there's even hyperlinks in there. And from that, you create different tabs and you create charts and you try to analyze it. You try to utilize macros to help you out. But what you can't do in Excel is, how do you validate it? You try with like if statements, or Crystal or my staff would send me a report and I do what I call my, don't be offended, my dumb test. And if the numbers don't add up, I'm like, okay, this isn't making sense. So, Excel is like it's a great product, but it's not great to utilize to analyze data and present it on a real-time basis. Macros are great. We utilize macros heavily. We still do. Macros are just great to automate a lot of the tedious work. So, I mentioned earlier, executives came to my unit and say, hey, we want you to create an interactive dashboard. And before we get started, one disclaimer, all of these dashboards we'll be demoing is sanitized. It does not contain any real data, it's demo. We even had to remove the names of fields, et cetera. But these are actual dashboards which are being utilized, but we had to sanitize them in case people print them out and they share. So when you look at our numbers, they're realistic, but they're not actuals. So again, this is a dashboard that we were asked to build for executives to be interactive. This is just a screenshot, the static one-dimensional like homepage on your dashboard. So we wanted to build it where it was like very easy to understand what you're looking at. If people, we learned this the hard way. In the beginning, we built dashboards that we understood all the metrics, but when you asked the end user to use it, they didn't understand what you were talking about. So we're trying to get, you know, a lot better with our dashboards that you look at it within a second or two, you understand what the numbers are. So on this one, we're measuring like 5 different areas, and they're looking at it on a monthly basis. Is this measures improving or not? So we utilize gauge charts. And what's great about a gauge chart, it's pretty simple. I guess my eyesight is pretty bad. Can you? Yeah, there it is. So the gauge charts would change from green is good, red is bad. So for topic 1, you know, it improved by 1.79% compared to the previous month. And then on topic 3, or it's a measure 3, I can't use the actual term, it decreased. So very quickly, depending on which measure or topic you're responsible for, you can tell if you're improving or not improving. And then we set up the gauge charts that this only increased by 1%. You see like the little gauge is, you know, like around 1% based on the 360 degrees. This is 24, and it's color coded. You know, this is kind of orange. Over here, it's over 100%. That's why you see the complete green. And then down below, these are the granular metrics which are being tracked, and then we're summarizing them to create the gauge chart. And this is interactive, that if you click on the individual metrics bars, it pulls up the details, historical details. And then another view of this same dashboard is a trend chart, so that they can click on that and they'll see the trend over like a 6-month period or a 7-month period. And very quickly, whoever is responsible for the different measures or topics, they can tell if they're improving or not improving. If they're not improving, they can dig down very quickly into the details and try to figure out why, and then address that. So, you know, this report, in the beginning, you know, we gave them a draft, and there's probably like 100 different versions. They, you know, each person, you know, 8 personalities kept changing it on us. And it finally got to the point, I'm like, okay, we got to lock this down. It's been 3 months, 4 months, and you're changing these, how we define it on a regular basis. You got to lock it down and create a benchmark. Create a benchmark, and let's revisit it in like 4 or 6 months and see where we need to adjust these measures. Otherwise, we're just spending day after day changing this dashboard. So Crystal, she'll share with you guys some of the challenges we experienced when we went from utilizing Excel to Tableau.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Pretty good? Okay, good. I speak really quietly, so let me know. Right, so like Gary was talking about, like we utilized Excel for our charts and our validations a lot of the time. And when we switched over to Tableau, one thing that we did was we made all these like really nice charts and stuff, but we were still using Excel as the data source. So all of our time that we were spent validating and making sure that the data was correct first, before making these charts, we didn't actually save any time making sure that the charts were correct and things. So one thing that we actually ended up doing was we sat down with our IT developers over the course of a few months and said, since you guys are generating these reports for us and then sending it to us, and we now have a tool that allows us to have direct access to the database, if you already have those reporting views, can we just have access to those instead? Or could we, if you don't have those made, can we make those so that way it's just a little bit easier for us to combine it and validate it and just have it all in one place instead of trying to use Excel files in other folders, and oh my gosh, it was not great. So once we actually got that set up and like getting the access to those databases, making the connections, we ended up like a lot of our technical difficulties were mostly gone. We were able to make extracts, so having it refreshed on a daily or an hourly schedule is however much we need it without breaking like performance of Tableau. That was great. And this actually helped with the buy-in portion of like getting generated support for our managers, because not only were they not waiting on us to make the charts, they could get on themselves, but we didn't have as many technical difficulties on like trying to get this data refreshed and validated. So they could just go into server, see the charts, or if they wanted, we could email the charts to them using the alerts or the subscriptions that Tableau server had. And one other thing that I did want to mention with the buy-in part was being able to like bring in the Tableau dashboards to a meeting and then like showing how we made them was very helpful, especially in the very beginning when we were making our first few projects. And then just sitting there and showing like, this is interactive, you can click on this, here's a tooltip to have that more information that you're wanting, was very helpful. And then with the last part, with the Wild West, we had, because everyone wanted to see it, wanted to have their own like questions asked, we had a lot of demand for our, I think we currently have 4 people that can actually make the Tableau dashboards with us. I think when we started having this demand, we only had 3. So yay, we have 1 more person. But we had so much demand and like trying to get like all these questions asked, and they wanted a quick turnaround. So we had to like figure out and make sure like the reports that we're sending on an ad hoc basis, is that something that we could make into like just like a general dashboard for other users, or in the case of maybe like our questions are changing over time. So our old dashboards that they are using now, are they still even valuable? And so do we need to like get rid of those and bring in new ones? So we are currently working on that part, and I believe we are doing pretty okay. Yeah, so Gary's gonna talk a little bit about the dashboards that we're about to demo, and then we'll get started on that part.
Or before we jump on that, the family support, I don't know if a lot of you guys are with the government, but the family support division with Missouri is responsible for entitlement programs, like, processing requests for food stamps, cash benefits, age, disabled, and family insurance. To give you an idea about who we are and about the challenges. Really the biggest challenge is data. Is like, where is the data? We have different eligibility systems. The different eligibility systems are not communicating with each other. Once you get access to the data, is like, is it correct? Is it right? How do you validate it? And a lot of times, I learned, I was new to the family support division, and I learned, very quickly that there are certain people that have been with the agency long enough that they can kind of like validate the data, to help you out. And those type of people are invaluable to make sure what you're creating is correct. Because it's easy to pull out the data, and if you don't fully understand it, you're creating an analysis which is incorrect. And over time, you may be able to figure that out. We have a new eligibility system for our family insurance, which is, it's not mature like our other program. It's been around like over 30 years, and people are comfortable with the data. The newer system it's a new, green system that we're trying to get the data warehouse built. We're trying to get views and tables built that we utilize in Tableau to analyze the data. And it's like a major challenge for us because, we think we understand the data, and then we realize as we're analyzing it and we're sharing it with people in the field, okay, this kind of doesn't make sense. We really think the values are this. And then you go back and, you really have to dig into the details of the data. You start we're starting to look, utilize SQL statements. SQL statements are very powerful to pull information out of tables. Tableau is great to copy and paste a SQL statement in it, but you need a different application, an editor, if you're agreeing with SQL statements on how to write them. And a lot of these dashboards that we're presenting, we utilize SQL statements. And then I'm also learning now that if you rely too heavily on the SQL statements within Tableau, it slows down the performance. And then, we're stuck with 10.4.6, whereas a fellow state of Missouri employee over there, Joe, you have what, 18.1?
Yes, on server.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we can't even utilize Hyper. So we're trying to figure out how to utilize things until I can convince we're separate to get me upgraded to 18.1. And because we're stuck on 10.4.6, we had to use our tablet because our reader package is on 10.4.6. And when we checked in, it won't, there were some errors and we didn't have time to fix the errors within 18.1. We're bringing our tablet and we'll work around this. So, I'm excited about these dashboards. The first one that was a game changer for the state of Missouri Family Support Division is a real-time hourly dashboard. And it's for the food stamp program, but when I, again, realized I sanitized all the data, I removed, the fields' names, et cetera. With food stamps, it's a federal requirement that your processing times is over 95%. And when I started, we were not above 95%. Overdues were high. They did not have access to real-time data. They had access, after 30 days. And if you're behind on your processing of application, how do you address it? You don't even know why you're overdue. So, I got it down to, every 30 days, then I got it weekly, then I got it daily, and then I got Tableau, and I'm like, we're going hourly. I'm okay with hourly, but if they want me to go even more, I'm cool with that. And then the other chart is for our different eligibility system. This is the one that we're utilizing. It's green. We struggle with the information, but we have that updated on the daily. I didn't want to go hourly because we're really struggling with the information pulling out of this new eligibility system. So on an hourly basis, it's working, and it's really a learning curve for us. And then, I'm the manager of the risk analysis unit, but with a lot of state agencies, you don't have a lot of resources. So you're probably asking, okay, the risk analysis unit, I created back in August of 2015 to provide, field operation reports or risk reports to decision makers and the processing staff in the field. And how I define, risk with income maintenance is overdue and not processing timely applications. But I was asked to start up an online application system. It doesn't fall within risk analysis, but I did start that up. We went live 2 years ago, and it's where customers can apply for benefits 24/7. So we created a dashboard where I can monitor that. We call it the condition monitoring. It provides me what's going on every 15 minutes with these online applications. And I also included where customers can upload verification documents you got to attach with your application. And I got like a small group that handles the technical calls and also process these uploaded verification documents. And then I had a lot of pushback starting up this online application system because people with 20, 30 years experience, they're like, oh, if the citizen of Missouri can apply online, so increase our rejection rate, so increase our processing. So I created this dashboard to track what is the rejection rate versus their online versus paper, because we're not 100% all submitted online. It's around, I think the last time I looked, maybe like, do you remember what total percent online presented? Is it like around 24%?
I think so.
Yeah.
20 to 24.
Yeah. And then a year ago, we were asked to, at an internal manager conference, I was asked to set up a table and explain to other manager coworkers within, the Family Support Division, who are we? What does the risk analysis unit does? So I told Crystal, it's like, okay, I'm pretty competitive. We're setting up the table, we're taking our big screen, and we're gonna create a game in Tableau. Because I wanted the people to walk by and see this game and stop. So Crystal will demo that. So we created actually a game in Tableau so that people could interact with it. So the first demo, I will go over the food stamp hourly chart. And then hopefully, if I don't talk way too much, maybe we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A. Okay, we got to pull up the other one.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So this is the hourly chart. It updates on the hour. Let me get over here where I can. All right, do you guys see that red dot? Oh, I could use the mouse.
Yeah.
All right, there it is. So this chart, decision makers have access to it via Tableau server. Managers and supervisors. I don't have enough licenses to give everybody statewide access to it. The frontline staff who are actually processing the apps, the way that we give them access to this chart is through a Tableau reader package. So I have a staff that uploads it in the morning and at 4 p.m. until, hopefully we can figure out some way that the state of Missouri can finally get a Tableau enterprise license, and then everybody can jump in and use this via server. But for now, my only solution is Tableau reader. And we upload it onto SharePoint. They have access. They can access it. But what's great about this chart is, we try to, create it where it's very simple. When you come in and you open it up, if you get at work at, say, 8 a.m., you can see at 7 a.m., there were 17 applications overdue. Come 5 p.m., you don't see these other bars. All you'll see if you get in at, say, 8:05, you'll see the bars for 7 a.m. at 8. It updates every hour. So by the end of the day, in this, sanitized example, they decreased their overviews from 17 to 13. And then to stay current, you really got to understand what's going on in the future. So we show them how many's due today, how many's due 2 days out, and 3 days out. So you can see that for due today, they started in this example at 221. They got it down to 11. And maybe those 11 they couldn't get processed is due to what we call client delays. Maybe the client wouldn't return the information we needed, or they wouldn't pick up the phone. So when it's a client delay, it's kind of like it's not part of your mandated timeliness number. It's kind of like a sunk cost. The state, we did all we could, but if the client doesn't follow through, we can't really do anything. So, I'm all about trends, charts, and T1, T2, T3, these are different types of applications. T1 is like expedited, where those should be processed within 7 days. T2 is like initial apps, and T3s are recertifications. So I wanted to provide them a chart where they could very quickly see, what's going on in their program. So in this example for the T1, which are expedited apps, they could tell that the overdue kind of was increasing in March. Hopefully they started digging into the metrics to try to figure out what's going on in March that our overdue is increasing. You can see it's starting to drop down. And we went live with this in December of 2016. And I think it was like February, March, we got our food stamps overdue down to just 7 apps in 1 day. And prior to that, I won't repeat the number, but it was kind of high. But that's why this was a game changer. We got it down to just 7 applications in 1 day. I'm not saying that this product was the total result of that, meaning you got to have the frontline staff focus on what's going on. But what it provided was the decision makers who are responsible for this program, for the first time, they had real-time information that if Crystal clicks on, say, the 17 overdue bar, they could dig down in that morning. It's like, hey, I got 17 applications overdue. Why is that? T1 is expedited. You got 1 expedited overdue. T2 is initials. You got 16 overdue. But what is real powerful is the crosstab to the right. That shows who is this application assigned to, who's their manager, why is it still pending? What type of application was it? Realize we do have like what we call combo applications where somebody applies for both, say, food stamps and TA, that's a combo. So for the first time in the morning, the manager could just click on that 17 bars. They could very quickly see, is their name listed? And if it was, they can, maybe call up that staff who is responsible to get that process and try to address it. And then, it's not part of the demo. From this information, I created what I called a casual trend chart. And what it is they started tracking for me the reasons all these applications are going overdue. And I wanted to understand what was the cause of the overdue. We got it down to really, for a while, it was client delays, which is good because you want the overdues to really filter down to client delays. It means you're doing everything else you can. Whereas client delays is if the client doesn't pick up the phone when they need to complete the interview or submit the verification documents by the due date, you can't really do anything about that. So this is an hourly chart. And also, this is maybe version 3 of this. Feedback was sometimes they're searching for a specific application. So we created a filter if Crystal typed in like A24. For any demo, you got to have the one that works. Yeah. So now if you're a manager or a staff and somebody calls you up and they're asking about the status of their application, they can utilize this dashboard to locate that application within this hourly chart and determine why is it overdue and who is it assigned to. Prior to that, they didn't have this type of information to use. And it has resulted in our timeliness is over 95%. We hit like this historic low of 7 overdue apps in one day, which is unbelievable. So this is kind of like, a big game changer. From this experience, we created a TA childcare hourly chart similar to that. And then the next chart is the day overdue pending,
yes.
I believe. And Crystal will go over that one.
Yes, okay. So as you can kind of see, it's kind of set up in a very similar format as the hourly one is. This is specifically looking at our new eligibility system that we were moving programs into. And specifically, we were trying to make sure that the data that we were grabbing to show for pending is actually applications and not something else. And we also wanted them to be able to see just specifically what is pending, because before that, our reports for it was very basic because it's a new system and we're still building the reports. So one thing that we kind of did with this is that we wanted to show all of their pending, not just what was overdue and what was due in today and 2 days and 3 days, but we want to show it like over the whole period of time. Just to kind of see like where is everything breaking out. And then also, as you can see, we have this overdue with a question mark, which is items that we wanted the caseworker to double check that those were actually applications, or if it was something to the effect of something that we're grabbing due to a flag in our system that we shouldn't be grabbing. So we also have the case of this has been revised since then, and also, before I forget, these numbers are not realistic. These are quite big numbers, but we also had the case of eligibility system. Oh my gosh, my brain just stopped, sorry. Right, so we had cases where our eligibility system and the tasking system that they worked their applications out of weren't meshing, and so we wanted to really quickly be able to show those as well, which is why it's kind of set up in the similar fashion, because a lot of the workers that went to this program also had access to the food stamp hourly one, so they knew how it normally worked. It's in the similar fashion with the being able to see the details behind each number. And then they could actually see right here specifically, what is the system saying? What is your tasking system saying? And they could figure out, maybe this is because of a specific thing, like maybe I just fixed something in the tasking system. Maybe the authorization for the application, like it getting processed, didn't actually go through fully, so they need to go and fix that.
Or to help you guys out, in this eligibility system, the tasking isn't part of the eligibility system. It's outside in SharePoint. So the people who are working in this income maintenance program, they get their tasks in SharePoint. And in SharePoint, if you may or may not complete the index form correct or not, but they still have to go into this eligibility system and actually process the application. And sometimes it doesn't reconcile. So what's important, if you go back to like the original view of this one,
Yep.
What's important to understand, when we demoed like the food stamp hourly, that's a system that's been around like 30, 40 years. This one, we have question marks because we're not for sure if those are truly overdue or why, because it's a new system and we're trying to figure out bugs. So we're trying to create this dashboard to help the decision makers to understand what we think is truly the overdue count and the pending, because we're not 100% sure. Because I was asked one time, I was explaining, the risk analysis unit and what we provide, and one question that got shot back at me is like, well, Gary, how do you know if your information is right? I'm like, well, I really don't. We just use it, we try our best. And that was the honest answer. It's like, because we're all struggling with these new systems, we truly don't know what our true answers are about pending and overdue and timeliness. Especially with the family insurance and the ACA, we all had to go into a new eligibility system, and that's a challenge. So there, we try to filter out like what I call bad noise, and we try to provide the decision makers with what our best understanding is with the overdue and the pending. And again, we built this for the processing center staffs and managers, where they can come in, they can click on, they can dig down, and they can see, who is this application assigned to? Why do we think it is pending? We created in the details that it shows like, what is the eligibility system showing? What is the tasking system showing? And that will help them understand where do they need to start to figure out why this went overdue. Or they may come back to us as like, well, your information is wrong. This is not overdue. And then we have to go back and try to figure out what did we program incorrect. So this is like a learning curve.
All right. On that note, do you want to go on to the next dashboard?
Yeah.
Okay.
So earlier, we created an online application system where clients can apply 24/7. And so I just call it like the condition monitoring. This is just a bubble chart or density map. This is all in Tableau. This one is not interactive, but it updates every 15 minutes. So if I expanded this out for over the past 2 years, in the beginning, prior to 8 a.m. is, before the resource centers open up, they close at 5 p.m. So if I expanded this, you would see in the beginning, when we went live with this online application system, we did it as a pilot. FNS, our federal partner, they were concerned that if we open up the floodgates to everybody can apply online all at once, it would affect our timeliness. So I convinced them that we can program it, and I can say these 3 counties can apply online. They would go online. If you were in that county, it's like, hey, you're eligible to apply online. If not, would you like us to send you an email or a text when it's available in your county? So I spent like 8 months going online, getting statewide. I went slow so that if I incurred any hiccups, I would stop it, address it, move forward. So I think, I spent 8 months to get it statewide. So if you looked at this in the beginning, what's great, this is how we were helping, say, citizens of Missouri with Tableau. You could tell that prior to this online application system, not a lot of people were applying before 8 a.m. or after 5 p.m. Now, depending on, the month, the day, holidays, more people are applying after 5 p.m., which is great because maybe that's the only time they have. They don't have the time or the resources to get to the, the office, apply in person. A lot of our customers may not even have access to a computer. They may have a phone, but it may not be a smartphone. And this application is also what we call mobile adaptive. You can pull it up on your phone. It's built in a web-based, but it will adapt to a phone. It's not an app. They asked me when we will create an app. That's in the future. But they can use their smartphone and apply online. But, the point I'm trying to make is, if we get our customers to apply on the weekends, after 5 or before 8 a.m., it provides benefits to them where they can apply at their convenience, but it also decreases the walk-in traffic to our resource centers. It decreases the calls to our call center. It decreases mail, because now they can upload everything electronically. And then, what I find great about this is, look, you have people applying for benefits at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Maybe this is somebody that got home from a split shift and they're in a lot of need. Maybe they woke up in the middle of the night and they searched, cash assistant. They came across this online application system and they applied. And that's the purpose of, working for a family support division, is providing the citizens means to apply for benefits they may qualify for. This is just a different view of this same bubble chart. This is just, during the week, weekends. Again, these are just, statics, demo numbers. Don't say, hey, Missouri only receives 400 online applications a day. Then all the documents we receive online, they have to be migrated into our electronic content management system. And if that doesn't get migrated within 24 hours, when somebody's trying to process that, it'll slow them down. So here we track and make sure all the documents we receive online gets migrated overnight. Sometimes, with any technologies, there's hiccups. If I see that the prior day didn't get migrated, I reach out to the electronic content management staff, and they'll research, and they may have to reach out to somebody in IT, and they'll push it through. Because if they don't get migrated into the electronic content management system, then the person that's pulling this up to process it, they won't see that that application or verification document did come in. It's just it's not sitting in that document yet, system yet. Then again, these are like different programs, food stamps, TA, et cetera. In the red is like all my pending numbers. We have a policy if it's an online food stamp expedited, we have to get that indexed and registered within 24 hours. If it's, initial, et cetera, within, it's usually within 30 days. But the expedited, we make sure we get that completed within 24 hours. So, I watch these numbers, make sure it doesn't get backed up. Again, red is like the pending. It's either broke out by application or verification. The gray, these got indexed or registered into our eligibility system. So now once they get indexed and registered into the eligibility system, they're ready for the processing center staff to pick it up and actually get it processed. And then I mentioned earlier with this online application system, people may have issues with their password. So we created a little technical call center, and they don't receive a lot of calls, and that group falls under me. And in between taking the technical calls to help people understand how to reset their password or maybe even navigate in the system, I have them process the web changes. Because the web changes are submitted online, and again, they got to get indexed and registered. So here, the dark green is like the web changes. The light green is verification. I realize over time that a staff may cherry pick what they're working on, and it's easier to increase your volume if you're doing strictly verifications over a web change. So I try to I'm all about tracking metrics and knowing what's going on. Some people don't like that, that big brother seeing everything, but I learned that if Big Brother does know what's going on with the metrics, then you can share that information to the right person to address. And what happens over time is it gets addressed and things improve. Because as soon as staff realize you are tracking what they're doing, they will focus a little more. Because as most managers know, it's hard to be around staff if they're on the other side of the building and truly know, are you truly focused on your work? Or, nowadays we all have a cell phone that it's easy, to send a text message. I don't know. So anyway, this is kind of like the dashboard we built where, it updates every 15 minutes. It helps me manage these online application system. It's pretty straightforward. We're pulling a lot of information out of this dashboard. It originates in SharePoint, and we had a lot of hiccups. I don't know if you guys have utilized SharePoint for lists, and then you export it into Excel, and Excel becomes like your data source in Tableau. That's not the route to go. Again, we don't have 2018 where we could address that, but so what we did was we had the programmers create a .NET application for us that they take our SharePoint list, they convert it in a SQL table for us. And that eliminated all the hiccups we were having. For some reason, when you export an Excel file that's linked to a SharePoint list, it doesn't like it updates sometimes. It just gets stuck. So we wrote scripts and macros in the morning to run at 3 a.m. to kind of push it through. But again, that's not efficient. And then we realized you can do a .NET, you can take that list and just shove it into a SQL table. And the hiccup issues eliminated. Okay.
All right. So one other dashboard specifically about the online application system is one of the worries that our managers had with unveiling the online application system is, are we going to see a big jump in our rejections for our applications? And we decided to make a quick printout PDF for them to be able to hand to their supervisor to see this is specifically what's happening with the applications for each program. And this actually specifically, the way that it's set up currently was made from, there was a webinar series that we did to try to make an accessible, make dashboards more accessible and easier for our managers to read. And this actually came about because of that webinar series. So they are able to look at this pretty quickly and see, okay, maybe we were right on the mark about the online application system, making it higher to be, making application rejections higher. But why are they happening? And we would give the top 3 reasons why we're seeing the rejections happening for online applications. And then if it's something to the effect of, maybe it's something to do with wording on the application system. So we could change that and see if that changes what we're seeing with the rejection rate. Or maybe it's the case of, we have a couple we have customers that will apply for benefits strictly to get a rejection letter in order to get to apply to another system. And we were seeing a lot of those happening in one of the programs, which made it a lot more efficient for them to be able to get that specific letter for their to apply for that next system. So they could either, like, managers would be able to see this and go, okay, we're seeing this, this, and this happening with our rejections. Let's try to fix that. Or they would see, okay, so this is actually a legitimate thing for customers to be able to use. So they would be able to check that as well. We also wanted to show that because we didn't do our online application was rolled out to a few counties every couple of weeks before we get fully statewide, and we wanted to show how it was before then, and when it finally went statewide, like how we were seeing it, like maybe it jumped up, maybe it went back down. We wanted to show, like, specifically, this is when it went statewide, and when it wasn't. So this was something like, it was something they could print off. It's not interactive, again, but it was something that they could print off and give to their supervisors and have them really quickly see, this is why this is happening. And, right. So the last,
Or before you jump to that one.
okay.
Or what was great about this dashboard is before we went live with this online application system, people were concerned about the rejection rate. So if this wasn't built in Tableau, we wouldn't have caught this one thing that just stands out like a sore thumb. So Tableau, by building this, you know, P3 is a program, and they were concerned that the online application rejection rate was over 70%. The dashboard shows that. So then as we started digging down into the granular details and reaching out to the field, like, why has this rejection rate really increased since we went live, you know, higher compared to the other programs? That's when they explained people located this online application system. They needed a rejection letter so they could apply elsewhere. It was quicker for them to go online and get that rejection letter quick versus if you did it in person or, you know, via the mail, it would take time. So they took advantage of the online application system, and we could justify why it's at 76%, and they're okay with that. But when we first started sharing that, they were really concerned. But then when you started digging down, you understood this is great. You created a system. The customers figure out on their own. We didn't tell them to do it. They figure out on their own. It's like, just apply online, get your rejection letter quick. So, you know, this was great. This really helped us to understand that. In Tableau, the dashboards, you know, it kind of points out these areas that you need to start, like, researching. Why is this one at 76% versus, you know, P1, why is it at 36%?
All right. And then I'm just going to quickly go through the game that we have because I believe we are around 10 minutes from the end. So just really quickly on this one, we had a managers conference where we were supposed to show and present what our unit does and specifically information to give to the managers about that. And we decided to kind of make this into a sort of quiz game. So that way this information is generated for you guys, but it was actually real information that they had regarding, like, the hourly charts and things like that. And we wanted to use this as a way of kind of gauging, are our dashboards, do they make sense to our managers? And if they were able to get through this little game without having questions about it, then we were like, okay, our dashboards are doing okay. Or if they had, like, a question on a very specific one, like, say, okay, that one does not make sense to our managers, let's go back and fix it. So I'll go pretty quickly through this. So this one, this dashboard looks very familiar from our first one. We just wanted them to see if they could actually read the question and look at the chart and say, okay, I know what the answer is. So in this case, from the start of the day to the end, how much did the overdue count decrease? We were hoping that our manager would go, okay, overdue, 7 a.m., 5 p.m., 17 minus 13, 4, okay. And then they would hit next. Side note, when they unveiled that they were doing buttons at the devs on stage, I was kind of mad because I had to make all these buttons. So
Yeah.
I was very happy, but I was also very mad. But
Or we don't wait on the dev people to do anything. You can't figure little tricks out on your own.
yeah. So in this case, they would, what is the number one reason why applications are processed late? We were hoping that they would say, okay, so this is a very big amount. This is also the top part. This color goes with this color. This is the highest number. So we're thinking it's cause 7. So hit next, go to the next one. Yeah, so this one's quite a bit.
Or this is an example of how not to build a dashboard, but anyway.
Yeah. So in August 2017, what was the percentage of applications received by M6? We were hoping that they could say, okay, so this says M6. They could either read it from here, going, okay, so it's that number, or we were hoping that they would click on the button and they would actually see it get filtered down to the very specific part. So 2806, next, with a button. So this one was also very hard to read, as you can tell. But we were hoping that they would use the filter to go to total P3 applications and say what percentage came in by M1. Hopefully M1 was the color. 43.37. I'm not going to hit that, but I want to let you know that I do know the answer. No worries. Hit the next button, and our survey data, we were hoping that they could see, okay, so what was the average score of question 7? We see question 7, we see the description. Hopefully they would see average question 7 at the top, see it's 4.261. They would hit next, and they would see the results. So, they did about this much because of the, I don't know if you guys noticed, but this is really hard to read. So we had a lot of trouble with this one specifically. But
yeah, we learned that those two are too busy, too much information. It's like when you build this, you know the numbers, you know where to click, and it's like intuitive. But then when you publish it and the people in the field, they're not used to like numbers like we are, or maybe even charts. And they're like, oh, Gary again, scratch, move on. So this is like a learning curve that we have to build these where even people up above me, if they don't understand what we're presenting within a second or two, they won't utilize it. So this was a lot of learning curve on how to build these where it's very quick, intuitive.
all right, so on that note.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, we are actually on the Q&A now. So, I'm sorry?
So in the other dashboard where you had the reasons chart.
This one?
Yes. So we have a similar situation, completely different. The fact that we are having some problems of files not getting loaded. We don't know if it's a training issue or a system issue. So in your operational role, how did you, so let me just give you a count. We have something overdue, like 600 counts of widgets overdue if you will. So in your operational metrics, how did you just zero in on exactly 17 causes, not 600 causes?
What we had to do was, this program administrator over this program was really into understanding metrics and what was going on. She had her managers track this manually in an Excel file because you can't pull out a lot of this information out of the eligibility system. Like client delays or agency delays, I could pull out of our eligibility system, but like the ones you're talking about, they had to track that manually. And when that was possible, when we got our overdue down to below 100. When it was over that, there's no way I could ask them to track that manually. But because we started tracking it manually, you could pinpoint on why they were going overdue, and then you may want to apply like Six Sigma or business process reengineering on these, like they're not getting that application uploaded. You may want to like figure out why. Maybe you need to change your process, see if that improves it or not. But to answer your question, it was tracked manually. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you're talking about using Tableau Reader, which is horrible. I'm sorry that you have to do that, but
Oh, the Tableau person just jumped up with a,
No.
no.
I mean,
Sorry.
No, for something that doesn't change, it's a little bit different. But are you dropping files to SharePoint on an hourly basis throughout the day?
No, the Tableau Reader has nothing to do with, I'm sorry, yes, not every hour. The last 3 days during the month, we drop it into SharePoint, the Tableau Reader, every hour. Because that's like the big demand on getting these application research processed. But outside of the last 3 days, we drop it into SharePoint at 8 a.m., at 4 p.m. However, I don't know if you guys are like us, but we're part of like Google.com University. It's like you can Google anything and you can find solutions. There is a solution on how to automate the Tableau Reader being uploaded, but it requires embedding a user ID and a password, and our IT wouldn't allow us to do that. We found a way to eliminate my staff doing this manually, but because it required us to embed a user ID and password that would be universal, no.
Yeah.
But I was trying to figure out how to get around that. So Joe just,
I have some solutions that I could.
okay, and that would help, and I'm sure Gene, he's back in St. Louis, I'm sure he'll send you a candy bar or something, because he does that the last day, every hour he uploads it.
You mentioned you rolled it out for adoption. Did you start with like St. Louis City and Jackson County? Or did you
No.
start with Greene and Christian, or which counties?
Yeah.
Highland?
Are you from
Missouri.
Missouri? No, we started with the smaller counties,
Okay.
just to get our feet wet.
Yep.
And we didn't roll it out into the metros, St. Louis, Kansas City, and Springfield till very last. And by the time I was getting to that point, they were asking when we were going to get it rolled out to St. Louis and Kansas City. But by that time, we had enough history, volume, that we were comfortable that we addressed all the hiccups. Yeah. Whereas if we did it first with, say, the metros, we would have had hiccups, and it would have been challenging to address.
Yeah.
So how are you modeling the user authentication? So all companies can see the over delays?
No. We publish it with Tableau server, and you have like group permissions. Yeah. So we control who has access to it. And because this is behind a firewall and it's encrypted, they can download it if they have a desktop, which, we don't have that many desktop licenses.
The second question is, are you guys thinking of creating impact reports and embedding on your website? Like the whole kind of a story?
Oh, you mean publish it on the public facing? No, right now, none of the information that we create is published on the public internet, but that's on my list. Currently you can go to the State of Missouri website, you can pull up public-facing dashboards, and I want to create all those dashboards in Tableau one of these days, and the director that's responsible for that area, I have approached her about when I get the time, I want to present some ideas about creating all of this with Tableau, because it looks more 21st century. Yeah.
One more question. In a manual upload of an Excel file into Tableau, what are some salient features and learning experiences where you organize your data in Excel? How have you learned to save time by keeping your data clean in that Excel file when you began with Tableau?
Yeah. I'll let Crystal jump on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we were so used to with like so many columns and stuff was that's not quite the way to go. I know that with a few of the first workbooks that we had to do, I did a lot of that data interpreter. I used that at the very beginning just to see like how it was grabbing. I did a lot of the pivot feature also in Tableau just to see like, is this the easier way to make the dashboard? And if so, then I would recreate the Excel workbook trying to make that specific data structure. And that got me used to using the databases as well, in my opinion.
So initially you spent a lot more time working with Excel before you even attempted on the canvas? Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, I would say so. I looked at it in Tableau first and went, okay, this does not make sense to me. Let me try again. And saw how Tableau was trying to structure the data and then structured my data like that first and then made charts off of that in Excel and then went to Tableau. I think, is that how you were? Yeah.
I mean, I'm a new user to Tableau. I've been sitting more on the requirements side, not on the developing side of
Mhm.
Tableau. So I've just delivered like a couple of dashboards, and what I'm seeing is I'm spending more time organizing my data before I get to the canvas. So I want to see how I can reduce the time because in my execs one answers like this, and I'm still sitting organizing my data. How should I be? I mean, I have a lot more work even while I'm on the canvas to give the data flexibility, interactiveness of the data that's required. So I just want to see how to optimize my time in Excel.
I used pivot tables in the very beginning, a lot of them, just to see like, if I interact with Tableau like this, how would I do this in Excel and then vice versa? That's the way that I would try it, sorry.
Or we deal with that type of question throughout the day is like, you know, they come for us for a lot of analysis, reports, numbers. And before we started utilizing Tableau, you know, I would try to have things built in Excel, retrieve it. You know, sometimes they were at a hearing and they're texting me and they're wanting information and, you know, you're doing the best you can. And sometimes the data just isn't there and you got to like fly through it. But my advice is just jump in and just do the best you can and you start learning. You'll pick up little tricks. But my advice is if you can get to the point to get out of Excel and try to have them build you tables, DB2s or SQL tables, go that route. It would save you a lot of time because before this meeting, they called me and asked me about some numbers. So we don't have Tableau mobile. I could have done it myself. And I couldn't fly with my tablet because the battery is deflective and, you know, you don't want to check that in. You know, we may not have been here. So I asked Crystal, was like, open up the dashboard quickly. So now they're used to that. They can approach me or call or text and we can get numbers like this, especially if we already have it built in Tableau. Or even with Tableau, sometimes we got to like adjust the numbers. It's pretty quick. Yeah.
All right. Do you think that we are over our time now? So.
All right. Well, thank you
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you in St. Louis?